Okay, this is a review of vocational rehabilitation, in particular of one model very recently presented by a group of American practitioners, the so-called individual placement and support, which is a model of vocational, very assertive, a very intensive model of individual placement and support, looking at supporting people in workplace with the fast introduction to the work environment and with dedicated professional helping people in the work environment on a one-to-one basis. Anyway, the review published by Bond shows that the rate of people getting employment, at least not during 1 to 2 year follow-up, not necessarily all time, but getting employment at least for some time, the rate is very impressive, 61%, which is very much more than the rates with the usual vocational rehabilitation approach done like training and so on. And the control, as you see, the control group, the employment rate is 23%. And this is, as you see, this is the absolute benefit increase, very high, it's 38%, which means a number needed to treat of 3. And this is very, I'd say, very high rate. I'd say this is very high efficacy. Obviously, only 11 studies, but there are other studies coming, and studies done in US, but also in Europe, in Italy as well. Okay, anti-stigma programs. Stigma is a big issue, and I think anti-stigma intervention should be part of community mental health. These are outcome studies, very difficult to conduct control trials with this kind of intervention. So I relied on a review by Corrigan, looking at the results of looking at observational studies with the pre-test, post-test design, or with the comparison without not randomized. And I have to say that on overall, the results of the usual anti-stigma programs is not impressive. You see the effort size are very small. The only difference is are the controlled studies looking at the anti-stigma intervention relying on contact between general population and people with mental disorders. The only indication of efficacy is in this, you see, in the cell, looking at controlled studies using contact as a strategy. Other strategies, education, publication, conference by psychiatrists, and so on, there is no evidence of efficacy. And I'd say even the big program of WPA on stigma reduction showed very disappointing results. Okay, cognitive remediation is a way to address cognitive deficits in schizophrenia. And again, you see there are some indication of moderate efficacy in terms of cognitive functioning and social functioning. No evidence of efficacy on psychotic symptoms. But this I think we can consider this as a promising and moderate effort size 0.45 and 0.42. Again, these are 40 studies, controlled studies. That's very high standard of methodological rigor with many cases, and we can consider this a very quite good level of evidence looking at number of studies and number of cases. Social skills training is, anyway, this is a selective review looking at the recent trials on social skills improvement targeted to improvement in real world, not the original and outdated model of social skills training introduced by Lieberman many years ago, but the model of social skills improvement centered through intervention in real world with people, looking at the social interaction in real world. Only 7 studies, the preliminary evidence, small number of cases, but quite good evidence of some effects in improvement in social functioning assessed in real world non-social functioning assessed in artificial environment like the old studies of social skills training. This promising approach, only 6 studies, 187 cases, but a very large effort size for social efforts or social functioning or social cognition enhancement, which is a new way to address the issue of helping people to interact better in social situations, is a mix of intervention based on cognitive aspects or intervention based on social interaction. At the bottom of each slide, you will find a reference, and if you want a reference, I will be happy to send you the reprints. So you can check whether I'm saying the truth or not. Okay, cognitive therapy of psychosis. Cognitive therapy of psychosis has been widely studied in the last years. We have 15 controlled studies and more than 1,000 cases. I have mixed feelings about cognitive therapy of psychosis. First of all, the quite surprising finding is that we can consider that the efficacy is mostly on negative symptoms. That's important, I think, but is the opposite, the opposite of the idea of the people who introduced cognitive therapy of psychosis, because cognitive therapy was mainly centered on positive symptoms. Anyway, I think that's important that we can, since the negative symptoms are very difficult to treat and there is no evidence of effect of drug treatment on negative symptoms, I think this is a quite important finding, and the quality of studies is very good. Supported housing, and that's important for you here, particularly in Greece, because if we look at, I'm looking at the presentation by Professor Morris, supported house means the way to help people needing some sort of residential support, avoiding long-term treatment in hospitals, and providing innovative ways to help people to stay in ordinary housing, providing flexible support. So not providing residential care treatment in a fixed way. These are not controlled studies, are very difficult to run a controlled study in this area, are naturalistic observational studies, comparison not randomized. But the results are, this is the review by Leff, which is not Julian Leff, Leff is a social worker studying this area from US. And you see that the effects are very impressive in three domain areas: residential stability, ability to people to stay in the community, reduction of hospital admission, and consumer satisfaction. And this, I think, is very important. No effect on psychotic symptoms, so we cannot expect that supported housing intervention help people to stay better in terms of psychosis, but in terms of the ability to stay in the community, to live in a normal housing arrangement with support, and in terms of avoiding hospital admission, I think this is a very strong indication of efficacy, to my opinion. My conclusion, straightforward conclusion. First of all, we have good quality. Experimental evidence of good quality is available to support a range of intervention for severe mental disorder. Good quality means we can have a good quality of data. That doesn't mean that the necessary data are showing efficacy, but the quality is good. No single intervention is effective across all outcome domains. No single intervention. Therefore, that means that this is a call for integrated intervention, for flexible, personalized approach, because there is we cannot approach psychosocial intervention in community care with the idea that one size fits all. No, because no single intervention can address all problems of a person with severe mental disorder. But if we are able to provide a range of intervention flexibly tailored to different groups of people, we can expect some results. Most important, I didn't show data, but I'll tell you, I'm taking the responsibility to tell this, that most surveys show a strong preference for psychosocial intervention by users. The users want, the only study in which this has been addressed clearly is in the studies on supported housing. The evidence is overwhelming anyway. Most surveys say that users like psychosocial intervention. Unfortunately, underutilization of psychosocial intervention is a common feature of mental health care in many areas of Europe. I'm not saying everywhere, but in many areas of Europe is like that, even in my country, in Italy. So this is a big problem. We are not using the evidence we have. And this is a big problem in terms of training, of policy, and there are many reasons for that. But I warn you that lack of resources is not the only reason. There are other reasons, like the training of professionals, ideology of professionals, narrow biomedical model endorsed by many people working in mental health area. And so this is a big issue to be addressed. And my last conclusion, any psychiatric reform must address, excuse me, there is a mistake here, a printing mistake. Any psychiatric reform must address not only service organization, but also the delivery of effective psychosocial intervention. So any psychiatric reform looking only at organizational aspects, which are very important, but leaving aside the issue of the content of care, will be a reform which will not address all the issues related to the organization of community care. And I'm saying that coming from a country in which the organizational aspect of care has been the target of psychiatric reform, and big changes with the closure of mental hospital have been achieved, strong modifying in a radical way the care or the organization of service, the framework of services. But the issue of content of care has not been adequately addressed. And I think this is a big problem if we want to talk about psychiatric reform. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.